welcome to another live stream. It's live stream Monday. My name is Francisco Cantu, and I'm coming here today after a wonderful weekend of lots of college football, lots of NFL, and I had a great weekend. If you want to go ahead and let me know right away in the chat, how was your weekend, what you did. I had a wonderful weekend, stayed in and got a lot of work done. Watched the LSU Alabama game. Watched what was the other top three matchup? It was the Tennessee versus Georgia game. That was fun. And then yesterday, I lost in all my fantasy leagues. But it was fun just to have a chill weekend. And now I am back here for another live stream Monday. And I am looking forward to discuss with you all the topic that we have prepared for the presentation today. Today's topic is on college application checklist. So today I'm going to be talking about everything you need to know before you submit those early applications, whether they are early action or early decision. And also, because we're going to be having regular decision coming up soon, I'm going to be covering that as well. The goal by the end of this presentation is for all of you, whether you are a parent or a student, which, by the way, you can let me know in the chat. I will be sharing your comments from the chat on the screen, just like here I have Laura commenting hello everyone on Facebook. I also have her on YouTube commenting hello everyone. Let us know where you're joining from. So when you comment, whether it is through the Facebook live stream chat or whether it is through the YouTube window, the comment section, I have the ability to share those comments here, and I will be monitoring the chat, keeping an eye out for the chat. At the end of this training, as always, I'm going to have a Q&A session. So I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to be reviewing all of the questions that I get from all of you throughout the presentation, and then I'm going to be answering them right away. So the reason why I make this pause is so that to let you know that you can start engaging. Let me know in the chat where you are watching from, whether you are a parent or a student. And the whole point, again, of this presentation today is whether you are a parent of a student who is applying to college within the next few weeks, or whether you are a student yourself who is going through the application process over the next few weeks. I want to make sure that you are set up for success, that you know exactly what you have to do, when you have to do it by. And, if you have any specific questions or any pending questions that are very particular to your own case, you can go ahead and let me know of them in the chat. And again, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to be scrolling back up and I'm going to be answering those questions that I accumulated throughout the chat. Or if your questions are related to one of the slides that I am covering, then I'm going to take a second and I'm going to be answering those questions right away because they complement what I'm talking about. So that's a little bit about the logistics of how the chat feature is going to be working. Again, the topic of today's presentation is a college application checklist. I'm going to be going over everything you and your student need to know. And I will get started with that in just a second, but I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before I get started with the presentation. So as you can see, we have a comment from Jenna Dean joining us. Hi, Francisco. Happy morning. Happy Monday. And you are joining from New Jersey. Welcome back. You were here last week and the week before that. So Jenna Dean, thank you so much for continuing to tune into this live streams and always be very engaged in asking questions. As you know, we'll try to answer them at the end of the presentation. And if anyone else like Jenna Dean has questions or comments, feel free to use the chat features on Facebook and YouTube to share them with everyone else. All right. So that was a comment by Jenna Dean. Moving on with housekeeping items, I do want to share with you all our socials just in case you want to learn more about the college admissions process and what stage we're currently on. So right now you are watching this live stream via either Facebook or YouTube. However, we are not just present on Facebook and YouTube. We send out reminders, announcements, we share content, pictures, news, all that stuff across all of our social media platforms. Again, we have YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and all across the board. Our account name is Best College Aid USA. So if you want to make sure that you stay up to date with everything that we share across all platforms, feel free to take a second from this live stream to go ahead and follow us, and you'll make sure to be notified or be up to date with everything related to the college admissions process. All right. So that was our social media platforms and an invitation to share them. moving on with the next housekeeping items that I wanted to share with you all. I wanted to beyond this presentation, which again is on everything you need to know before you finish your college applications. I do want to invite you all to our free training on the 6 steps to go to college with scholarships. Again, throughout the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be answering your questions. I'm going to be going over the presentation. However, week to week, it's a recurring theme that once the presentation's over, we get an email or we get some questions from people who either joined late or didn't get a chance to ask their questions right away. Whatever the point is or whatever the question might be, we found that we had to have a catch-all for people who weren't able to tune in or join or had other questions. So that is why I wrote the script and I recorded, and I got help from David and Laura, who do the Spanish live streams with the editing part of it. But we put together this free training that we finished up earlier right now we're in November. We finished it in middle of October. So it's fresh off the press, and it's a free presentation on the 6 steps to go to college with scholarships. Again, we've done hundreds of these trainings, but because we wanted to make sure that, again, today we're going to be talking about the college application checklist, everything you need to do. But because we changed the topics of these live streams week to week, we wanted to have sort of like a fallback catch-all presentation that encapsulates the entire journey, not just the specific topic that we're talking about week to week. So if at the end of this presentation or in parallel or at any point you want to watch that free presentation, you can just check out the link in bio. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and show you how you can go ahead and do that, how you can register for that. So right now, if you go to, let's see, if you are watching us on YouTube, that's the screen, and you go to the link in bio right below this video, you are going to be redirected to the registration page. You go to please save my seat, and then you put in your information, and you will be good to go for that free training, all right? Again, it's a completely free presentation that we put together because we know that there's a lot of questions that you might have. So that is a backup or a safety net in case after this presentation you don't get your questions answered, or you do, but you want to find even more information that's outside of the topics that we'll be covering today, all right? So that was housekeeping item number 2 before we got started. For those of you that are late or just joining us now, just a reminder, today's presentation is on the college application checklist. Why? Because throughout the next few days, a big batch of the early action applications will be due. And in the coming months, regular applications will be due as well. So I want to make sure that you all know of everything you have to know. And if you have a student applying or if you're a student yourself, I want to make sure that you don't miss out on any sort of documentation that you need to submit, all right? So that's the presentation for today. And the last housekeeping item that I wanted to cover before getting started with that is that we are going to continue to have this weekly live streams as we always do, Mondays and Tuesdays at 3 p.m. And on Monday, we do YouTube and Facebook, which is through which you are watching us right now, either YouTube or Facebook. And then tomorrow, let's say you are a parent right now. For example, we have Jenna Dean again, who commented, "Hi, Francisco, happy Monday, joining from New Jersey." On previous live streams, Jenna has shared with us that she is a mother. So if you are a parent, then you might be more active on YouTube or Facebook. Nonetheless, we know that our Tuesday live streams are more geared towards students, even though it's the same topic. The examples that I give out are more student-oriented, and the way that I communicate is a little bit more geared towards students. So again, if you're a parent watching this and you want to share this information with your student, make sure you let them know that we'll be live tomorrow, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Instagram and TikTok. All right, but with that being said, I think I'm done with the housekeeping items. So now I'm going to get started with the presentation. So all right, so the college application checklist. All right, so as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, I'm going to be covering everything that you need to submit or that your student needs to submit so that you don't fall behind or that your documentation or your college application is not incomplete and you have the best fighting chance at each of the schools you are applying to or that your student is applying to. All right, so the first thing I want to cover in this presentation, which again, Remember, if at any point I'm going too fast or you have any questions, use the chat and I will be answering those questions as well. So first thing that I wanted to talk to you all about is the basic requirements. Now, as I go through these, you might already be very familiarized with a lot of these, but this is just a sort of the skeleton of what I'm going to elaborate more later on, all right? So bear with me just a second as I go through them. So the basic requirements, financial aid and scholarship forms. A lot of the popular ones are the CSS profile, the FAFSA, which is a free application for federal student aid. All those forms are submitted for a purpose. They're submitted so that your student can qualify for as much institutional, federal, state, and private aid as possible, all right? And a lot of these forms opened up on October 1st, okay? So that's a basic requirement that if you have not done so already, you need to get on it because you want to make your student as eligible as possible for as much money as possible, okay? So that's the first basic requirement that I wanted to cover today. I'm going to elaborate more on that later. Second is the college applications themselves. So that is the questionnaires, that is the essays, that is the transcripts, everything that is involved in the qualifying and evaluating process that a college admissions officers review. That is what I'm considering a college application. Next up, it's kind of similar to that, but I want to separate it just to make sure that you all understand the importance of keeping track of time, and that is standardized test scores. A lot of people don't plan ahead, and a lot of students submit their applications without having submitted their standardized test scores. And while some schools might be a little bit more flexible or might have different deadlines for their test scores, this is something that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later on, but that I want you all to be aware of, that when a college is evaluating a student, if they require those test scores, boom, you got to have them. You got to send them in and they got to have them in their hands so they can properly evaluate you, all right? So that's something we're going to elaborate more later on. Another basic requirement is that high school diploma. You know, in this college application process, one of the big mistakes that you don't want to make is having your student graduate high school. Finish their college applications, but not graduate high school, right? Whether it's because of a academic standing sort of thing or a disciplinary thing, you want to make sure that high school diploma gets earned. And then the last one is those transcripts that I'm going to talk more about, how you can be in touch with your counselor to make sure that those get sent in time, right? So again, I start off very generic. I start off with a very basic description of the most important basic requirements. I'm going to get into more specifics and technical things later on, but I just want you all to know that these are all things that those are the moving parts that you want to keep track of for the most part when you go through this process, specifically in the next few weeks, that you will be finishing up those early applications or regular decision applications, all right? And as a reminder, as I continue, keep using that chat feature. For example, Annie Salazar is saying hello from San Francisco. Hello, Annie. Nice to have you here. And as you can see, the Best College Aid account, David and Laura, are also answering questions. So Best College Aid account on YouTube is saying hello, Annie. Thank you for joining. Don't forget, Francisco will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. And that is for all of you. If you have questions throughout the presentation, keep them coming. And at the end, I'm going to go back to the chat and I'm going to be answering them. All right. So thank you for using that chat feature. Moving on with the presentation. Next thing that I wanted to cover in this college application checklist is, by this point, if you have not already done so, you need to get on that as soon as possible. You have to have your list of colleges, right? Where is your student going to apply to school? What are the requirements for those schools? And once they have that list of colleges, they have to know how they will actually apply, right? So it's one thing to know, oh, I want to apply to the University of North Carolina or to Stanford or to University of Florida, to wherever it is. And a very different thing is actually doing it. And the thing is, most universities will fall under one of three application options, all right? So different schools have different portals through which you can apply. So what I mean by this is that while one university might have their students fill out their college application through a third-party site or a portal called the Common Application, other schools might require their students or their applicants to apply to that school through a different portal called the coalition application, while other schools might have their own individual website where they require their students or their applicants to log in and fill out those applications, right? And being aware of which universities in your list require or enable their students to apply through which portals is very important, because you do not want to be caught by surprise if it's the day before the application's due and you're just getting started, which by the way should never be the case, that you're doing your applications the day before. You need to plan this on time, and that is why I'm glad that you're watching this right now, because this should set you up to look, if you have not already done so, look at each of the schools in your list and figure out through which portal you're going to have to apply, so that it's not the day before the application being due and you don't find, for example, a school that you can only apply through the coalition application, and let's say you're looking for it through the common application and it might not even be listed as an option. You have to go ahead and figure out which school requires or enables their applicants to apply through which portal, okay? Having your list of colleges, let's say you have 8 schools that you're going to apply to, and you know school number 1 requires you to apply through the common application, okay? Let's say school 1, school 4, school 6, school 7, school 8, they all require you to apply through the common application. You know that you can recycle, for example, the common application essay through to all those schools that require you to apply through them. Whereas for the coalition application, you're going to have to create an account similar to when you're signing up for Facebook or YouTube or any other platform. Same with these sort of applications. The common application, you have to make your own profile. You have to add the list that you're going to be applying, the colleges that you're going to be applying to. You have to set all that up and then send your applications through those portals, okay? So piece number 1 or advice number 1 is to go down your list of schools and attach an application portal to that school so you know what to expect and where to look for those applications, okay? Again, a lot of you might already know this. A lot of you, this might be new information, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page after finishing up this presentation, okay? Before I move on, I do want to share a few more comments. I'm getting that Deng is watching from Kenya. Hello, welcome. And Dan Schrader is asking or commenting from Florida. Hi, Dan. Nice to have you here. And yeah, if you have any questions, I will be holding off on those until the end of the presentation, but do keep them coming because I will be answering them, all right? All right, the next thing that I wanted to talk to you all in this presentation is I want to focus on juniors and seniors. So if you're the parent of a junior or a senior, these are going to be very important reminders for you all in this application process, and that is early applications, okay? So I already talked to you all about sort of what to expect in the coming months. You know, in the coming months, first, let's talk about the next few weeks, okay? So right now, it is November 7th, and there are a lot of schools that offer early action applications, which again, if you're confused about what an early action application is, those are those type of applications in which they are due earlier and a student needs to submit all necessary documentation by the priority deadline, which in many cases will be November 15th. And in turn, the student will find out if they're accepted or not, usually before the winter break or at some point in January, before some of the later regular decision applications are due, right? So there's a lot of benefits to applying early. If you have not already watched our live streams on early action, early decision, go ahead and watch those. They'll be very insightful to you. But pretty much, do know that as of November 7th, there are 2 or 3 important deadlines for early action, early decision. Those would be November 15th, December the 1st, and December 15th. Obviously, every school is different, so go ahead and check your list of colleges and make sure that you note those early application deadlines, whether it's early action or early decision, so that you do not miss out on those application deadlines and you take advantage of the fact that a lot of early applications have a higher acceptance rate to their applicants, all right? So make sure you are aware of that, because the last thing you want to do is get caught by surprise and fill out those college applications like very last minute, or have to wait until regular decision despite already having everything figured out as far as your GPA, as far as your standardized test scores. You want to make sure you optimize and maximize and capitalize off of those higher acceptance rates for those schools that have early application deadlines. All right. So that's something that I wanted to remind you all if you have not already done so. And then now moving on to the more technical aspect of it, or the thing that is mostly directly tied to the title of the presentation, which is the application checklist. I divided the presentation first covering requirements or checklist items for early action, and then I'm going to do regular decision. But for now, I want to focus on making sure that you all have each of the following items figured out for your early action, early decision applications. All right. So first, let's cover FAFSA and CSS profile for schools with a priority deadline. All right. So if you're a student who wants to go to college, who is currently applying to schools, and who wants to be eligible to receive federal aid, state aid, in some cases, institutional aid, and even some private scholarships require these. If you want to make yourself eligible to receive any of these four types of awards, more likely than not, you're going to have to fill out the FAFSA and if require the CSS profile, right? So the FAFSA, as we've covered in other live streams, is the free application for federal student aid. And a lot of people have this misconception of, oh, it's an application that you fill out to be eligible to receive need-based aid, all right? So if my family makes above a certain amount, then I'm not going to get any help from filling out the FAFSA, so why even bother, right? And while it might be the case that a lot of the federal aid that gets awarded from filling out the FAFSA is on a need-based basis, the truth of the matter is that there are many institutional awards, many state-based programs that are based on merit, as well as other institutional awards that award their students money in the form of scholarships, of grants, of low interest loans, whatever the case might be, and they award these this money to their students for their merit, right? Because they have above a certain GPA, or because they have above a certain standardized test score. But the thing is that in order to be able to award these sums of money to their eligible students, they require, for their own housekeeping statistics, for their own records, for proof of eligibility, they require a student to have submitted the FAFSA, or in some cases the CSS profile. So even if you think your family makes too much money, or even if you think that you are not going to be able to receive any sort of award because of how much money your family has, it's still like the risk to reward, when you do a cost benefit analysis of how long it takes you to fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile versus the potential maximum awards that you might become eligible to receive, it's a no-brainer to just fill it out and hope for the best and make sure that you're doing everything on time and right. Because if you are a high school student who's worked, an internship or a summer job, or you have a job on the weekends and you get paid, I don't know, minimum wage or whatever the case might be, I always like to, whenever we're working with our best college age students, I always like to think about applying to scholarships and making yourself eligible for institutional grants and all that stuff, in terms of how many hours you would get paid at a job, or at a minimum wage summer job, or whatever it is that a high school student is doing to earn money. And it's mind-blowing how a student could receive thousands of dollars for forms that might take them 45 minutes to fill out, an hour to fill out. Even if it takes a student a day to gather all the financial documents with the help of their parents and whatnot, being eligible to receive, in some cases, many of our students receive financial awards and financial aid packages and scholarship merit-based packages of tens of thousands of dollars, and a lot of them didn't spend more than probably combined a day or 2 days filling out these forms, right? So how much work you have to put in for the potential reward, it's a no-brainer. So fill those out. Again, just to finish up on the FAFSA and CSS profile point of this presentation, if you have not already done so, the FAFSA and the CSS profile opened up on October 1st. And as I mentioned, a lot of the awards that get given out to students who are eligible for them and who filled out the FAFSA CSS profile, a lot of these institutions that give out, again, whether it's federal, institutional, private, or state awards, they might be giving out that money on a first come, first serve basis. So even though the form opened up on October 1st and is going to stay open for a few more months, it is in your best interest to go ahead and just fill it out as soon as possible and send it to schools, just so that, again, the sum of money that you might be eligible to receive, it's a larger pool of money rather than waiting till the end when a lot of these awards have been given out. All right. Moving on to the next point that I wanted to share with you all about the requirements that you need to make sure you have checked off before your early action, early decision applications is to fill out the actual application, right? And what does the actual application entail? Well, that entails the personal essay and any additional question that the applications might ask. So I know that a lot of schools, on top of, let's say, your school requires you to apply to it through the common application. And obviously, as you might know from having filled out or having already started this process, the common application has the main common application essay that you will be using or sending out to other schools that you will be applying on through the common application. Nonetheless, on top of that, each specific school might have their own essay or their own prompts or their own list of questionnaires or bullets where you list your extracurricular activities, right? So you want to go through each of them and make sure that you fill out as much information as possible. And also, we get this question a lot from our members. And since we are doing this live stream and there's a lot of people who might be having this question, I'm not going to wait till it gets asked, but I'm just going to tell you right off the bat that whenever you have an optional essay prompt, yeah, I mean, technically it's optional because you can submit your application without having submitted that prompt or filling out that optional essay. However, we always advise to fill out those optional prompts, but make sure that you don't repeat anything that you have already said. So for example, if let's say you're one of the schools that you're applying to has an optional prompt of if there's anything in your, I don't know, transcripts or academic history that might have impacted your performance, for whatever reason, this is your chance to let us know. And it's an optional prompt. Well, if you already wrote your common application essay on, I don't know, your 8th grade science fair that changed your life, and you did all of your extracurricular or volunteer hours revolved around that, you're not going to take that optional essay to rewrite what you already wrote for your common application essay, but rather you are going to look at the prompt, you're going to answer the question, and you are going to share experiences that may have affected your academic performance at some point in high school, even if that was not reflected on your grades, but it was a transformational experience that gives the essay officers an insight as to who you are, your persona, all that good stuff. It's always better to over show your character and who you are than to under show your character and be just another dull application, right? So do take advantage of those optional essays, but make sure you are intentional with what you write. Don't just repeat something that you have already said, all right? And then on the topic of completing those applications, as you may or may not know, the recommendation letters, whether they are from a teacher, whether they are from a coach, whether they are from a boss, whether they are from someone who oversaw that internship that you might have been doing over the summer, whatever the case might be, or whoever is writing those rec letters for you, you want to make sure that right now, November 7th, with a lot of the common application or the early applications being due, if you have not already asked your your teachers or your professors or whoever it might be for a recommendation letter and the application is due in a week, then you're late. You need to get on that right away, because you do not want to be that student who is asking their third period English teacher, hey, can you write my recommendation letter? Yeah, sure. When is it due? Tonight. You don't want to do that. Not only is it a little bit rude, but it might keep your professor, your teacher, whoever's writing that letter, it might keep them from fully taking advantage of the opportunity to share how wonderful you are, right? So want to make sure you rather give them a prompt or to tell them to write a letter too early than too late. All right. So that's just something that I want to make sure that you all are aware of, that if you have not already done so, reach out to your rec letter writers. And if you already reached out to them, you want to make sure you stay on top of them, and not in an annoying way, but in a very courteous way, letting them know, hey, thank you so much for writing that application letter. Let me know if you need anything from me to help you write it. So it could be like a resume, a CV, some brief, whatever it might be that would facilitate them. And that's a way to help them out. But also it's like a subtle way of telling them, hey, by the way, this is coming up. Don't forget about writing my letter. So that's how I would go about reminding your letter of recommendation writers about the upcoming deadlines. All right. Next up is very similar, high school transcripts. Those are usually sent out by your high school counselor, by the by the free college counselor in your high school. And they, once you're filling out those applications, you should have an option to let your counselor know that they have to send those transcripts to that particular college. So again, make sure you write them an email, pop into their office, whatever the case might be, to remind them of those upcoming deadlines, because you do not want your transcripts to be missing from your application, because then the colleges can't qualify your application as complete and also might miss out on unfairly evaluating you. It might look bad. Your application is complete. So you don't want to do that. Make sure you stay on top of them. And finally, as far as the application goes itself, make sure that you schedule those college interviews. If that particular school requires you to schedule an interview with an alumni or anything like that, make sure you schedule those as early as possible. Be prompt on your responses whenever they reach out to you about an interview, and be professional. You know, if you have an email, make sure that your email's not I don't know, middle school kitten fox73, you know, like make sure it's something that's your name at Gmail or at your high school name, whatever the case might be, and always be professional with those college interviewees. All right, so next up, moving on with other requirements for early action, early decision, standardized test results. Again, you need to make sure that you take those ahead of time and that you give yourself enough time to send those results over to the school so that your application is not incomplete at the moment of reviewing it. All right. And finally, if there is a college application fee, which by the way, with teacher members, is something you should know, is that if you are enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program, you might be eligible for a voucher for your application costs. So like sending the cost, your application to schools might be free. Your SAT or ACT might be free as well. So that's something that we teach our students how to make sure that they are aware of. And that's something that I'm sharing with you right now. If you meet any of the criteria I just said with free and reduced lunch, make sure you check it out with your high school counselor, because you might not have to even pay those average $45 that it costs to send out those college applications. All right. But anyways, those are just the requirements that I wanted to go ahead and share with you all for early action and early decision. Now, before I go to the chat and answer some of the questions that I've been getting, because I see that I have been getting questions from Dang, from Jenna Dean, and a few others that I will get to at the end of the presentation. I want to quickly go over the requirements for students who will be applying regular decisions. So I just did the requirements for students who are applying early action and early decision. So that should be coming up in the next few weeks. And now I want to move on to students who are waiting on their regular decision and regular rolling admissions applications. All right. So very similar, FAFSA and CSS profile. Those you want to make sure you fill out as early as possible. Opened up on October 1st. However, the earlier you apply, the larger sum of money you might be eligible to receive from institutional, federal, state, and private aid. So make sure you get those submitted. I already listed a lot of the reasons why you should have that, even if you don't think that you are going to earn any need-based money. There are a lot of merit-based awards that require the FAFSA and CSS profile. I already went over that. Next up, again, completing applications. The same things that apply to early action and early decision stand. You know, you want to make sure you have your personal essays, your additional questions. You want to make sure that if your school requires recommendation letters or transcripts, that those are sent out ahead of time so that your application is not incomplete by the time of review. So again, reach out to your rec letter teachers. If you're applying regular decision, you might have a little bit more time to reach out to them. So right now would be an ideal time to start thinking about who you will ask to write your rec letters, and also let them know. All right, you don't want to decide, oh, I'm gonna ask them, and then just never do, because then the deadline will come up, and you, again, you don't want to be discourteous, and you do not want to wait until the last minute to ask for those rec letters. Transcripts, again, same thing as with early action, early decision. Ask your high school's college advisor. College interview, same process. Be professional, schedule those, answer right away. Be courteous. Yeah, same process. The one thing that is very different between regular decision and rolling admissions than with early action, early decision is you should know if you're applying to regular decision over early action or early decision, let's say because you wanted to improve your SAT or ACT scores, right? If you made that conscious decision of applying applying regular instead of early, because let's say your SAT or ACT scores are not quite there yet, like you followed Best College Aid and you watched some of our previous live streams, right? And you realized, okay, let's say I'm going to apply to, I don't know, XYZ school, and I'm thinking about applying early. However, once I check their average statistics for their latest admitted student class, and I see that on average, their 50th percentile student, scored a 32 on the ACT, right? And right now you are at a 28. So let's say that, so you're going to hold off on those early applications. You're going to wait to apply regular decision, okay? Because you want to have that additional attempt or that final attempt to bring that ACT score up, okay? Let's say that's your strategy. That's a very valid strategy. That's a very good strategy because you're becoming a more eligible applicant, and the cost benefit of those higher percentage admission statistics from early action are offset by just having a stronger application, right? If you are doing that, you do not want to forget to actually schedule the SAT or ACT, or send them on time, right? So there has to be a purpose as to why you are applying this strategy. And once you're applying that strategy, you need to execute well. And you want to make sure that the colleges that you're applying to, whether they super score or don't super score, whatever the case might be, that your later attempts at the SAT or ACT are scheduled, and that you send those scores directly to the schools so that they get sent on time and they can consider you, okay? So that is a big difference between applying early action and early decision and regular decision. And then the last one I already covered, same thing as with early action, early decision, which is to pay for your college application fee. Again, on average, they're $45. However, if you have free and reduced lunch, this is something that you can consult with your free high school counselor to make sure that you don't pay those fees if you don't have to. Same as with the SAT or ACT. So do get that checked out, because that's something that you can save yourself $45 per school. Why not go ahead and do that? Okay. So that was it for the presentation. Those were the main reminders that I wanted to share with you all regarding your early applications. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go over some questions. I know that throughout YouTube and Facebook, the chat had been popping off. So I have a lot of questions stacked up here that I'm going to go ahead and answer right now. But before I do that, I want to take one final chance before the questions to invite you all to our free training. I know that throughout this presentation, I've been talking about the college application, the college application checklist of requirements that you have to fulfill before applying to schools. However, let's say you have questions about the SAT, or questions about extracurriculars, or questions about your student, being in 9th grade or in middle school. We made this free training to address the questions that we are not covering on this live streams, because these live streams are very topical. They are related to whatever is going on in the college admissions process or journey. So again, if you want a broader overview on the 6 steps to go to college with scholarships, from middle school all the way through senior year of high school, or even life in college, we cover those in our free training. And in order to check that out, if you are watching us on YouTube, let me share my screen. Let's say you are watching us on YouTube, and this is the presentation. If you scroll back down here to the description, you can see a link for the presentation. You click it, it'll open up a window for the free training, and you can click on Save My Seat, and boom, that's your registration page. That's all you have to do. You register and you watch that free training. So that's something that I wanted to make sure that you all knew you can access in case you had a question about something that we're not covering right now. Okay, so I'm gonna take one quick sip of coffee and then I'm gonna get rolling with these questions. Okay. All right. So questions. Let's see. Dang David is asking, what's the most considered extracurricular in any application? All right. So David asks, what is the most considered extracurricular activity in any application? That is an excellent question. So different colleges, as opposed to SATs or ACTs or GPA, which are numbers that they can compare because they are quantifiable pieces of information. With extracurricular activities, there might be different discretions or different considerations that go into evaluating the validity of an extracurricular activity. However, throughout years of research and after talking with many counselors, what is agreed upon as two of the most important considerations when evaluating any extracurricular activity basically are two main things, and that is leadership and duration. Okay, so regardless of what the activity is, regardless of the field that the extracurricular activity is in, the two main things that a student should worry about displaying is leadership, so meaning what is the degree of their involvement, and is it validated by a title, whether that is president of the club or the organization, vice president, founder, honorary member, someone who has had a serious impact. And also, as a piece of advice, just side note, if whenever you are applying and you are expressing your degree of involvement, is always nice, and it's always encouraged to add numbers. So let's say you were in charge of recruiting for a club or for finances of a club. If you can say, oh, increased, membership retention by 150%, or fundraised, I don't know, $15,000 for this charity, whatever the case might be, having those numbers really make an abstract extracurricular activity that a college admissions officer might not know about, and it converts it into a very digestible. Everyone knows what 150% is. Everyone knows what $15,000 is. So it makes it more impressive and something that people can relate to. So that is leadership and impact. And then the other element of an extracurricular activity that colleges evaluate is duration. So how long have you been involved in that extracurricular activity? A lot of students make have the misconception that once senior year hits, they have to go ahead and get enrolled in a bunch of different extracurricular activities and a bunch of different clubs, and graduate with a bunch of cords around their neck, signifying all the clubs that they joined, where in reality it is way more valuable to have fewer clubs, but that you were a member of since the beginning of high school, or even from middle school, or extracurricular activities, sports that you might not necessarily practice in college, but that you have been practicing for many years or decades, or you play the piano since you were 5, or you were a swimmer for your entire life. Why? Because that just shows that you were not in the activity for the sake of having it on your resume, but rather because you were dedicated to it. You had commitment. You can stick to what you start. So duration is very, very valuable. So those are two considerations that I think will help all of you whenever you are considering how you will present extracurricular activities to colleges in your application. So, dang, that's an excellent question. Thank you so much for asking. Xiao is asking, hello, people. Been a long time since I came here. It's just a time zone difference for me. How are you? Nice to have you back, man. I am well. We still record these live streams, so if it would help with the time zone difference, you can always watch these recordings. I know that whenever we're live, you get to participate with comments like this, so I appreciate your commitment. And yeah, we'll continue to repost this on, and you can see our socials here: Best College Aid USA, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. We'll post clippings of these live streams in those platforms, as well as the full recording on Facebook and YouTube. So I appreciate you coming in here and dropping by again. Nice to have you here. And whatever questions you have, whatever way we can help you, make sure you keep those questions coming. All right. We also have Mudorjon from Uzbekistan. Hello from Uzbekistan. Hello. It's nice to see that we're getting viewers and people watching from all over the place. Welcome, welcome. Let's see. Annie Salazar asked, hello, thanks for all this information. My question is, for some state universities, they don't require SAT or ACT. Is it still recommended to take them? Will this make any difference in admissions? That's a great question. Excellent question. So ever since COVID-19, a lot of schools, an increasing number of schools have been employing or adopting a test optional or even a test blind policy, which is what you're referring to here. And for those schools that are test optional that might not necessarily require SAT or ACT scores, what we teach our students inside Best College Aid and what I recommend that you do is to go into the school's latest admitted students class profile or description. You can find this with tools like the College Board search engine tool or through the college's official website. And based on that, you can see a breakdown, a distribution of the admission statistics. More specifically, you can see how the school's latest admitted class performed on average on the SAT or ACT. So if you see that the average ACT score was, I don't know, a 29 or a 30, or you see that the SAT average was, I don't know, a 1200 or a 1300, by having that sort of framework or reference in your mind, you can go ahead and take those exams, see how you perform. Don't send them in yet, but wait till you get those results back. And once you have those results, at hand, you can compare them with the average of that of the students in the latest admitted students class. And you can see how the rest of your statistics, so your GPA, your extracurriculars, your volunteer hours, you can see how those stack up against the average. So let's say that the average GPA, I don't know, it's a 3.8 and you have a 3.95, but your SAT or ACT scores are below the average that you just found out. Well, in that case, you know that your standardized tests will bring your overall application below average, right? So you'll know not to send them in. However, if you take them and your SAT and your GPA and extracurriculars and everything are right on par with what the typical student looks like at that university, but your SAT or ACT scores are way, way higher, then you know that including those in your application will be an absolute asset to the overall application and will strengthen the final application at the end. So that's how we go about teaching our students what to send or not send their test scores to test optional or test blind schools, right? So that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because I feel like a lot of people have had that question since COVID-19 and since more and more schools started incorporating test optional policies. So great question. So do keep them coming. Let's see. I have a few more questions here. Let's see. The next question is from Jacob Fisher, and Jacob Fisher is asking, why do teachers always say that junior year is the most important year? So great question. The reason why teachers say that junior year is the most important year is mainly because of the fact that whenever a college admissions officer is reviewing your application as a whole, they get to see the breakdown of your classes and your performance in those classes at each semester of your high school career. And given that junior year is the last final year and the last 2 semesters for which most students who are applying early action, early decision, regular decision, they will be applying with the junior year that they just finished as their last reference point. That is why a lot of people say that is the most important, because it is the most recent representation of your current academic standing, and also because it has all sorts of implications to the GPA with which you apply to college, and also because you learn a lot of the material for which you will be evaluated on the SAT or ACT. So by performing well and learning well, you can use those learnings and perform well on those standardized test scores, on those standardized tests, which will be in a great degree of the questions asking you about that material that you just learned during junior year, right? So those are a few of the reasons why teachers say that a junior year is one of the most important ones, if not the most important one, when a college is reviewing an applicant. All right. Great question. Let's see. Next up, we have a question from Linda Gomez. And Linda Gomez is asking, what do you recommend more, AP classes or dual enrollment? So, great question. What do I recommend more? First, I would start by seeing what your school offers, because not all high schools offer dual enrollment, AP classes, an IB curriculum. So, starting off by knowing what your school offers might be the easiest or the path of less resistance, because you might not even have to worry about which one looks better if your school only offers APs, because if your school only offers APs, then take what they offer. However, let's say that your school offers all these different programs. What I would go ahead and do is consider the implications of each of them. So, for example, in a dual enrollment program, you will most likely be attending the courses within a community college or a college in the local area. So you will be, within the atmosphere of a college student. A lot of people tend to be intimidated by that. Others rise to the challenge and enjoy, being in a more serious academic based environment. However, if you want to stay within your local high school, an AP class might be a better option for you. Another consideration is the accreditation. So for an AP class, you might have to, no, you might not have to, you definitely have to take and get above a certain score on the AP exam. And depending on the colleges that you will be transferring those credits into, it might be above a 4 or a 5 even. The base standard is getting above a 3 to pass the AP exam, but some schools need their student to get even higher than that to accept those credits, right? So whereas in a dual enrollment class, you get the credits as long as you pass the class, because it's a college class. So a lot of people who are not necessarily great test takers might be better off taking a dual enrollment class and performing better at that. And because of that, as a result, they do better in the class. They get a better GPA boost had they, taken the AP class. And in that AP class, let's say your teacher might be very, it weights very heavily the exams, because at the end of the day, the AP exam is what matters. So they want to prepare you. So they give a lot of value tests, and a student might get nervous and not do well at those. So you're going to have to factor in the implications of each of the classes to see. Don't think about it in terms of what do colleges think is more impressive, but think about it in terms of what do my specific set of characteristics and who I am as a student, my test taking skills, my social skills, whether I would enjoy to be in a college campus or whether I would enjoy to remain in my high school. All those factors are a better indication or indicators as to whether or not you should take an AP class or a dual enrollment class. So hopefully those different factors that I just listed help you decide. Next question we have from Kristen Wells, which is, when should my son start studying for the SAT? He is in 9th grade. Great question. So SAT and ACT, they cover a lot of the material that a student will end up learning or have learned by the end of their junior year. So usually the answer is start as early as possible, but do know that if you start using resources like Khan Academy or like Kaplan or practice exams, all previously released practice exams, you will see that much of the content you will have not learned yet, especially if your student is in 9th grade, because again, SAT and ACT exams take and pull out information from the classes that a student typically takes in 9th, 10th, 11th grade. But don't be scared if you don't know, if your students start studying in 9th grade and they don't necessarily know everything that they're being tested on. You will learn it throughout high school. So I do advise to start as early as possible and have an open mind and be willing to learn, because if you start that early, which again is encouraged, there will be some topics that you will not have yet learned, but you will. And it's good to start early so that you know what you need to pay extra attention in class, because if you start studying, I don't know, pre-algebra or algebra 2 or geometry, and you have not yet taken those classes, but you encounter those questions on your practice exams, then once you are learning it the next year or the next semester or whatever it is, you will know to pay extra attention, because you will know that you will be quizzed on that when you take the next SAT or ACT, all right? So summary of my answer, as early as possible, and be willing to learn the things that you don't know because you haven't learned them yet once you take those practice exams. Great question. All right. Next up, next question. Let's see. The next question is from Vini Carp, and they are asking on YouTube, what is the difference between weighted and unweighted GPA? Perfect. So basically, the difference between the two is the way in which they are calculated. So I like to think about the term weighted as something that gets, pulled like a weight. It's weighted upward based on the difficulty of the class. So while an unweighted GPA is just your standard 4.0 max GPA, in which an A is worth a certain amount of points, a B plus is worth a certain amount of points, a B is worth a certain amount of points, C plus, C minus, all that stuff, all the way down. The higher the score, the higher you get out of a 4.0 scale, regardless of the class that you're taking. A weighted GPA, which again gets weighted upwards based on the difficulty of the class, can be based on a higher scale, so it doesn't end at just 4.0 or 5.0. The more difficult the class is, the more points you are eligible to receive. So it takes into consideration the degree of difficulty, whether the class is an AP class, an IB class, a dual enrollment class, or even an honors class. The more difficult, the more advanced that a class is, the higher the weight or the scale in which they get graded out of is. So this is a way for colleges to evaluate not just whether a student got A's or B's or whatever, but also on top of getting those good grades, what was the degree of difficulty of the curriculum that they took, during their high school years. All right. So that is the biggest difference between weighted and unweighted GPA. All right. Moving on to, I believe I have time for one more question because we're hitting on 4 p.m. So we're already a little bit late, but let me do one more question. And this one is from Dina Rhodes. And Dina Rhodes is asking, do you have any essay writing tips? Absolutely. So I talked about this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but among the top set of tips I would give students, or that I give students, number one is to answer the question. One of the biggest mistakes that students make is they want to get so creative and they want to write, this beautiful essay drawing some sort of a bunch of allegories and a bunch of visual representation of their journey and whatnot. And they focus so much on crafting this beautifully written piece that they forget to literally answer the prompt. If the prompt is asking you what has been your toughest high school experience, and you start talking about the toughness of your childhood and how you overcame it and whatnot, it might be a great essay, but if it doesn't answer what's been the biggest difficulty of your high school career, then you might be missing out on some points that you would get for basic, reading comprehension. So that would be the first thing. Answer the prompt. Make sure that whatever you're writing ends up satisfying the reader based on what they were asking you to write. And then peer reviewing it. I know that we are all great writers, but when you get this myopic view of your piece of writing, that you can get so caught up in being invested in, oh, that took me so long to word it perfectly, so I want to keep it, because you're, again, so invested on the sunk cost of having written something that you sometimes cannot be as objective as someone with a fresh set of eyes who is reading it for the first time, who might identify that something, sounds a little weird or a little too wordy or whatnot. So I would say trust your peer reviewers, and ideally these peer reviewers would be, teachers, some sort of adults. If you have some friends, they can also read it and they can also give you feedback, but I would prioritize probably like your English teachers feedback a little bit more, just because they're so experienced with reading a bunch of these. All right. So I would say those two are the initial, off the top of my head, pieces of advice. Enter the prompt, get peer reviewing, and have fun, be creative. It shouldn't be a horrible process, just as long as you share different components and you're not too repetitive. Oh, I guess that's a third piece of advice. If you are writing different prompts and you on top of having, I don't know, the common application general essay, you also submit some supplemental essays, and on top of that, the school also asks you to do an individual prompt or a specific prompt to the school, whether it's optional or whatnot. you do not want to repeat everything you already said on your other essays, right? Make sure that everything that you write is intentional and it satisfies the purpose of presenting a different element of you that is not repetitive and redundant, that just exhausts the reader, okay? So those are my main pieces of advice for your essay writers out there, okay? Great questions, everyone. I am going through the chat, and I think I answered everything. If I did not get to your question, it's already 4:03 p.m., so we're out of time. But if I did not get to your question, here's my compromise, what I'm going to do for you. So make sure that you go ahead and check out the link in bio, because we're in the middle of college application season. So because we're in full swing of college application season, I have prepared, as I talked about throughout the presentation, I wrote this in the month of October. We recorded it, we edited it, and I have prepared for you all a free presentation on the 6 steps to go to college with scholarships. Again, this will expand on everything we talked about today, but it will elaborate on different topics of the college application journey. It will focus more on scholarships, on financial aid, merit-based scholarships, grants. It will focus on making your final list of colleges. So if you're a little bit further behind than what we discussed about today, this would be a great starting point. And on top of that, if you go ahead and register for that, which let me show you how you can go ahead and do that. If you go ahead and do that, let's say you are watching the YouTube video right here that I'm sharing on my screen, and you scroll back to the description and you click the link on the link under the video, you will be prompted to register for the training. Yes, please save my seat. You click on that and you fill out the information. You'll be able to see the presentation. It's 45 minutes. And again, I finished it up in October, so it should be very pertinent to everything that's going on in the world of college admissions today. And because you watched this training, and because you're registering to the training from this live stream, which hopefully you got a lot of value out of, there is a special discount. Again, no strings attached. Just in the spirit of full transparency, we do have an offer at the end talking about the full paid program. I make an offer if, let's say, you have watched me for the last 65 minutes where I've been rambling on, answering your questions. Hopefully you didn't get too tired of hearing me speak. And if you enjoyed, again, my teaching style, if you enjoy what I have to say, the presentation and whatnot, you will have a special offer at the end of the training as a thank you for having stuck around with us, and because you are serious about, going through the college application journey in the best way possible. We're going to talk in that training about everything that the Best College Aid Full program includes. Again, so no strings attached. I mean, if you watch it and you find it captivating and you learn, but you decide not to join, I'm still going to be doing this live streams week to week, and I'm still going to be answering your questions. But there is a whole other universe of unlimited advising, SAT and ACT test prep materials, on-demand videos showing you tutorials, how to fill out every form, how to find a list of colleges, all that stuff. Discounts on Dell computers, discounts on AP or SAT or ACT prep books. All those things are part of the Best College Aid membership, and you will learn about that at the end of the presentation on top of the discount. But again, no strings attached. If you decide to not join, which again, I very much think you will find a lot of value out of it, I still will be here next week, as I always am, on our weekly live streams. Again, today was Monday at 3 p.m. we started. Tomorrow I'll be back on Instagram and TikTok at Best College Aid USA, and I will be answering those questions and doing this presentation. So please go ahead and do check out that free presentation. Also check out the sale that we're having at the end for you all who are coming straight from our Facebook and YouTube Live. Again, that offer is at the end of the presentation. And that is it for today. I know I went a little bit long today, but I think it was because of a good reason. I think because we had a lot of great questions. So again, hopefully you got a lot of value out of this, and hopefully you join me again next week. Again, I'm here every Monday, and this is the highlight of my week to get to answer these questions and hear about all these wonderful things, whether you are a domestic student, an international student, being able to contribute, even if it's a small fraction or a small little baby bit to your college application journey, and be part of the success that I know you're going to have. Yeah, it's a highlight of my week, and that is why David, Laura, and I focus so much on providing this content for you. So hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully answer your questions. I know I went long. I'm going to shut up now. Have a wonderful day, y'all.